Hello, my name is Peter Bill, and I am just going over what hermeneutics is. Hermeneutics is the branch of knowledge that details us with interpretation from older texts like um, stuff in the Tanakh, the Quran, but specifically what I'm talking about today is hermeneutics from the Bible. So it's important to know hermeneutics because you don't want to just read a book just to read it. Like, you want to know more of the underlying message between stories from the Bible and messages from the Bible as well. And especially it's important to know context because we just don't want to read it because we want to read it. Like, what the Bible is essentially is just like it's a giant puzzle that we have to interpret, but also put the pieces together in order to understand the full picture. And once we get that full picture under and place it all together, the more we understand it and the more clear it becomes to us. And I think really these two pieces of context that I'm going over helps us out a lot, not only to understand the backgrounds back in the ancient Judaism, and also the cultural context as well, seeing what happened around them and why all these things happened to the Bible. Just beginning here over historical context. What historical context is really just knowing where it was placed in history, seeing where it was. The Bible is based off of Jerusalem, and we understand why it was there and why God also placed it there as well. And with historical context, we gotta begin with the author, who wrote that book, who it was intended for, the original audience. And when thinking about the original audience, who it was, Judaism and the Romans, Hellenistic Jews, or even the Hebrew Jews. Hunter and Wellum explained it this way, that we should distinguish the original characters from the stories from the original readers, those who were reading scriptures about those characters. And the Bible ultimately not only was a letter to the Jewish people back then, but yet it's also a letter to us as well. But we can't just read it based off our own knowledge. We gotta read it off the knowledge from ancient Judaism and culture context. Why was the thing said back then so important for them? Why it was going to them specifically, and coinciding with historical context is the cultural context of the biblical book. This includes cultural circumstances that gave rise to the book, why it was created, and how it can help them back them up as a culture, as well as the cultural features of the time. What was important. One message that sticks out a lot with this is reading in Luke 1 about Mary. We knew the history behind it. She was a virgin, but yeah, we also got to read it culture-wise, that Mary was about 14 or 15 years old, and that she was barren with a child named Jesus. And back then, we didn't know it, or we did know it, that those ladies who were seen as giving birth to someone else right before marriage could be stoned to death at the worst case scenario, and at the best being an outcast back then. And we also got to remember that these were real life circumstances back then as well, between the books, the poetry, the gospels, and the letters. And that's really just my basic understanding of hermeneutics that I want to tell you guys. It's not just about reading a book to read it, but yeah, it's also seeing it as a more as a puzzle. You know, we got to put pieces together. We got to understand how the full picture looks like. And historical context and culture context can help us a lot with that. Thanks.